All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. I have the privilege this evening to have a very special guest. Coach Dennis Ward is joining us as we are going to be talking about the free agency frenzy that is currently going on in the National Football League. Dennis, how you doing this evening?
What's up, brother? How we doing, man?
Good, man. Good. Listen. I just been watching all of this action that's been going on, like all of these dollars and cents that's been flying around, and like some of it, I'm trying to see if it makes sense to me. One thing that has really caught my eye from the beginning, and I want to get your feedback on it. I like personally how what the defending champs were able to do. They did something that a lot of people didn't expect them to do. They weren't expected to be able to keep Shaq Barrett. They found a way to do it. They weren't expected to keep Levante David. They were able to do that as well. They
No,
franchised.
my dad hats.
Yeah, they franchise tagged wide receiver Chris Godwin. And you look at the Bucks right now; they have put themselves in a pretty good position to go back and do this thing again, man.
Well, you know, of course, Shaq Barrett took a pay cut. I told you, they got the hometown. They had the hometown discount, and there's nothing wrong with taking less money to win. And I'll never fault anyone for taking less money to win, or for your own personal happiness. You watch a lot of these guys, and a lot of these guys end up on teams that might win or might be good, and they're probably not necessarily really happy in the city. Might not match their personality. There's a lot of different things. Hold on one second. That's not a dad hat, Samaya. That's a Scully. And these things may not necessarily match what's going on. So, you have to give them time to, work these things out. And Shaq Barrett's obviously happy, and you can't put a price on happiness. And Tom Brady, for some reason, is like the ultimate teammate. He's the one convincing people to take less money, takes less money himself all the time for the sake of winning, and you'll never ever see him complain about it one bit. So there's a lot to be said for how Brady creates that culture. Well, interesting enough, Antonio Brown hasn't re-signed yet. I'm wondering if he's getting a little dollar hungry now.
Well, I mean, the thing with AB, for my money, I look at it honestly. I don't see anybody in the NFL who's going to be willing to go out there and give AB a ton of money because, I mean, you look back at his track record in Pittsburgh. You look back at his track record, in the short period with the Raiders. Tampa got him on cheap due to the fact that Tom Brady went to bat for him. Because remember, Bruce Arians really didn't even want him, and Tom Brady went to bat for him, and that was it. So honestly, I think at the end of the day, uh, Tampa's going to get him back. I know Rob Gronkowski was talking about going out there and testing the free agency waters. But I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, Gronk was not going to play any place else, but besides Tampa, because Brady is there, and I know that there are Brady haters out there naturally, but like I consistently say, you can't knock the man because he's always willing to take less money. We saw him just restructure his deal because you know what, he wants to win. And I constantly say it all the time on my podcast. I constantly say it when I'm just conversing with people. This is why Tom Brady is consistently winning because you know what? The guy is taking less money so that the people around him can get taken care of. And we talked about that Tampa secondary and what they did in the Super Bowl, but a lot of that was predicated on that front four because if you go back and watch the tape, and I saw it immediately during the live telecast of Super Bowl number 55, Patrick Mahomes had two, maybe three throws where he actually had his feet set. And that was that pass rush. They were relentless. And of course, from coaching football, when you have that front four taking care of business up front, it makes the job of the secondary so much easier because they really can pin their ears back. It also makes the job of a defensive coordinator so much easier because he doesn't have to worry about mixing up or dialing up blitzes as much as he would if the front four wasn't taking care of their business. So I think it was big for them to go out there and get Shaq Barrett and keep Levante David. I know that they are talking to Ndamukong Suh. I'm not sure how far that the talks have progressed at this moment, but I mean, if you can get that whole crew back to like quote unquote run it back and get a second crack at this. I mean, right now I do say that Tampa is, in my opinion, the best team in the NFC right now. I really feel maybe Green Bay, could give them a legit shot. I know that people are talking about the Rams, since they got Matt Stafford. I'm not sold on that because remember, the Rams just traded Michael Brockers to Detroit. So, I mean, I'm looking at it as Green Bay. I know that there are going to be some people who are going to talk about Dallas since they got Dak, since they kept Dak. I mean, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But, I mean, I look at it right now, the NFC as of this day, March 18th, is Tampa Bay's to lose.
Let me explain something to you. And as I use my historical eye, as I've watched so much football since I've been a kid, when you have teams that have imposing figures on the interior of the defense, right? So Ndamukong Suh's 35. He still was imposing his will upon guys. Vita Vea hardly played. And when my team, the Raiders, played them, I wasn't shocked, but they were scary. They were scary in the interior because after you had those two really hard to deal with interior D-line, you had Shaq Barrett on the outside, you had Levante David as the outside linebacker on the weak side, and let's not forget they have Devin White. This guy is everywhere. He's moving faster than your running back. He's moving faster than your slot receiver. And when he gets there, he's got bad intentions, man. He's coming to take your head off.
Yeah.
He's not slowing down.
Yeah.
And then they blitz him. They got a really, really, really fast front seven and a powerful front seven. Normally you see one or the other. They got a combination of size and speed, and they kept it together. So how do you deal with that? Now, going back to that Super Bowl, like you said, I mean, what are you going to do with two backup tackles? These guys have top-tier D-line talent on that team. And let's not forget about JPP.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, they got JPP, they got Ndamukong Suh, they got Shaq Barrett, they got Vita Vea. All four of those guys were top 10 picks.
And
then you got Devin White. That was the top 10 pick also. I mean, I could be wrong about one of them, but Vita Vea went 11, or he was somewhere in there. But these are all high first-round draft picks. You don't see that much.
Well,
and Suh's old.
Well, I mean, Jason Licht, I don't think that he got enough credit for drafting, over the past couple of years in Tampa. It was just the fact that they needed, a quarterback to make it all come together because Tampa was consistently picking early. We see the Mike Evanses of the world join that team, the Chris Godwins. I said it when it happened. I couldn't believe it. And I want to get your opinion on this as well. The fact that Antoine Winfield Jr. fell so far as he did in the draft, because I saw him play in Minnesota and I'm like, listen, this guy was all over the field. And, that comes back to like teams who, will reach, in the draft, early on for a guy instead of taking like a sure thing like Antoine Winfield Jr. And then you put him on that defense and on that secondary that is already talented. And I mean, it's, for a defensive coordinator like Todd Bowles, is kind of like, it's stealing. So, I mean, you look at this Tampa defense, they came together at the right time. They gelled. And these guys are definitely ready to go out there and make it happen once again, man.
I absolutely loved Antoine Winfield Jr. coming out. The knock on him, he was short, 5'9", but he, when you see short DBs, you look to see if they have the vertical and the ball skills. A la Earl Thomas. He wasn't a tall guy either.
Right.
These guys have changed of direction. They have anticipation, and they have ball skills. But I loved him. I wanted the Raiders to draft this guy. They take this. They take the corner out of Ohio State. Still not, sold on the kid. I mean, Damon Arnett. I was so upset, man, because I love Antoine Winfield Jr. I loved this guy's game. I just thought he was perfect for the NFL. But what happens is a lot of teams don't like drafting short safeties, and when you're a little bit undersized in the height area, sometimes they don't really draft you. But he had every other measurable. He ran 4.4, nice vert. He's strength, and then he checked all the pedigree boxes, from a mental standpoint. You can tell he knows what he's doing when he's back there. And sometimes there's no substitute for that. So, Antoine Winfield was a great pickup. Now, let's not forget, those corners can be had. Those corners can be had in Tampa. Right. You can beat those guys. Right. And Carlton Davis is not the fastest guy. I think he ran like a 4.6 coming out of Auburn. These guys aren't, the best one-on-one cover guys. But when you got everything else, you don't have to do it for that long. So.
Now, we've seen a lot of surprising things in free agency. Bill Belichick all of a sudden decided to spend money. And I mean, you're looking in New England. I mean, granted, they have a lot of holes on that team for a lot of different reasons. But you look at it, they bring in Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith at tight end. You wonder if they're trying to once again find the magic that they had, of course, when they had Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski at tight end. I think they drafted them in the same year.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, Matthew Judon, they picked him up, the outside linebacker from the Baltimore Ravens. We see Jalen Mills, the former cornerback of the Philadelphia Eagles. We saw the Pats go out there and spend some money. Are you really sold on what they did?
So let's go to this. So you left the name out, and I've never seen them pay a receiver like this. They gave Nelson Aguilar like a $25 million deal.
Yeah.
So let's elaborate on that. I'm gonna start with him because I watched Raider film a ton.
Right.
So from last year, the way John Gruden used him and Henry Ruggs III was amazing. He constantly put pressure on the defense. And what started happening was defenses had to choose between him and Aguilar in the deep intermediate ways of the way he was designing his route combinations. Because then he would take Waller and bring him in underneath. Hence the reason why Nelson Aguilar got off so much, because teams were worried about Waller. Teams were overly afraid of Ruggs' speed, and guess who got the single coverage? Millie. Right. So this guy was making play after play. Carr was aggressive, and it looked like he was tearing it up, which he was. He's an excellent route runner. He has great burst, great speed, great change of direction. He's a very good route runner. Here's my problem with paying a guy like him $20-something million. He is not a hands catcher. When I want to pay a wide receiver a lot of money, he has to be a hands catcher. He has to pluck the football out of the air when it's thrown to him. He's not a hands catcher. And he will drop some bad footballs on you. We saw that in Philly. He was dropping the ball. If you pop in the Raiders tape, there's a few plays he made where he almost dropped the ball. I'm telling you, I watched every game. Now, I loved having him. But I'm glad the Raiders didn't pay him $20-something million because I wouldn't have paid him that. So, in turn, they signed John Brown, who, in my opinion, is better than him. That's just my opinion. Now, you get paid when you have a good season. And he had an okay season. He only caught under 50 passes, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 48 for 8-something, 848. I would have to look it up. I don't like to be incorrect on these things. But they paid him a lot of money. And I don't know if they're going to get their money's worth out of that guy. If I had to guess right now, he plays 1 year in New England and they cut him the next year. And I'd be willing to bet that. Now, as for the Jonnu Smith guy, he's a bit of a tweener for me. Normally they like their tight ends to be really good inline blockers so they can use them in the play action pass game. That guy's like an H-back. And the other tight end what's the other tight end?
Hunter Henry.
Now he's an inline guy. I could see them really getting something out of him. Now here's my problem with the Patriots. They signed all these guys and they brought back in Cam Newton, and he was throwing the ball straight into the ground last year. So I don't know. What do they do at quarterback? Do they draft the kid from Alabama? Does he get there when they're picking? These guys could get pushed up severely depending on how these first few picks go. If you see Zach Wilson go number 2, then, Trey Lance gets pushed up, then he gets pushed up, then you still have Justin Fields. They all could get pushed up into the top 10, and then boom, there you go. No quarterback for you, Patriots. Then you got to go with Cam Newton again or Jarrett Stidham.
Just to piggyback off of what you just said, I'm gonna, take a line from, the former NFL general manager Bill Polian. When it comes to drafting, it only takes one team, one GM to do something stupid, and it messes up your entire draft board. And we consistently see teams year in and year out, have these reaches, exactly in the draft. And there's a reason why you consistently see the same teams picking early on in the draft because, they're taking reaches. And, there's going to be somebody that's going to, fall in love with a quarterback or feel like they need to take a quarterback in round 1 when they really don't. And, theoretically, if you're in New England, you could probably get a guy like Mac Jones mid-first round. But like we said, it's only going to take that one team to do something, crazy. And, when I think about it, I think about the Patriots. I'm looking at it. I want to give Cam Newton the benefit of the doubt because, he didn't have a training camp last season or like a spring last season really, and he was trying to get, up to speed with a new team. However, with that said, part of me really feels like Cam is damaged goods. You're talking about a bad foot, but more importantly, a bad shoulder as a quarterback. That is tough. And I mean, you look at the way that Cam has played throughout his entire career, even going back to college. A very physical guy. He loved to run the football, loved to mix it up between the tackles. Cam is a big dude, but that style of play wears on you. And you're talking about a shoulder surgery. That's tough to come back from. And you look at it, you get yourself a burner in Nelson Aguilar, and like you made a great point as far as the drops. He had, a case of the drops throughout his entire career, even going back to USC. But Aguilar is going to separate from the DBs. He can definitely do that. But can Cam Newton get him the ball? That's the big thing.
And this is something that two things I always paid attention to whenever I watch quarterbacks play in college. And these are two things that they almost never change. And it changed this year for me with one guy, and I was so shocked and floored that I really didn't even have words for it. Two things that transfer. Quarterbacks that throw interceptions, always throw interceptions. That's rule number one. Number two, quarterbacks that are inaccurate are almost always inaccurate. So the only guy that I've seen go from inaccurate to accurate was Josh Allen last year in my lifetime of watching quarterbacks. I've never seen a guy go from 50-something% to almost 70. That's a testament to Brian Daboll. That's a testament to him and his hard work. That's a testament to them getting Stephon Diggs, who he threw the ball to almost all the time. All of these things, and I'm just like, wow, I've never really seen anybody do this. Because he never used to scare me. Yeah, he's big, he's athletic, got a big arm. I'm like, yeah, whatever. This guy's going to throw the ball into the ground, throw it over guys' heads. Accuracy is something that just does not just grow on a tree. People that are accurate are inherently accurate. And as someone that does basketball and football at the same time, it's almost like a shooter. Quarterbacks are almost like shooters. Accurate quarterbacks are like jump shooters. They can just drop it in there. You really can't explain how they can do it, but from wherever they at, they can drop it in there. It's like when Steph Curry's running around and he shoots it from half court and it goes straight in. You're like, how the hell does he do that? And you watch Aaron Rodgers run around and drop a deep ball in between two defenders. It's like shooting a basketball. I'm telling you, William, as someone that does both things, it's really not that different if you ask me. That's just my, I could be wrong, but that's just how I look at it. And that's very, very, very rare. And Cam Newton's at the end of his career, he's getting worse with his accuracy. He looked really bad. Yeah. He had 8 touchdown passes and 10 interceptions. And then the way he made his money was running the football. He couldn't even really do that well. So, and that was in part because they didn't have the running game to go along with his running game. Like, normally he has a back that's good for 1,000 yards for the season, and they'll open his run game up because they honor him the running back, and, they're giving him, better reads for his zone read and stuff like that. And I don't know. Cam Newton was never my cup of tea as a quarterback. He's not somebody that if I'm a GM, I'm going after, because the name of the game in the NFL these days is, can you throw the football accurately down the field and limit your turnovers? So,
yeah, I mean,
and you had 2 guys that turned the ball over in college, and they got in the NFL. They turned the ball over. Sam Darnold, Jameis Winston. I would have never drafted either one of those guys. They just turned the ball over. That's what they do now. If you just look at it, William, just go back and look at any of these quarterbacks that they came out of college. If they were throwing the interceptions, they're still throwing them. Trust me.
Well, you mentioned Jameis Winston, and you look at it. He got the 1-year deal for $12 million to stay in New Orleans, and you look at it, the writing was on the wall. I mean, everybody, if you saw Drew Brees in that final month of the regular season, you knew that Drew Brees was basically on borrowed time. That showed up in their playoff loss to Tampa. And then on top of that, I'm sure that there were probably some people that felt like, Sean Payton should have benched Drew Brees, which he wasn't going to, in favor of Jameis Winston. But, hopefully for Jameis's sake now, he's had a season to, be with Sean Payton. He's had a season to sit behind Drew Brees. And for me, I really thought if he couldn't get it done with Bruce Arians as his coach in Tampa, I really didn't see too many more opportunities for him. He got an opportunity now, but I think the biggest thing for Jameis, number one, the maturity, and also, like you said, ball security, because this is a guy that in his last season in Tampa, He was in the 30-30 club, 33 touchdowns and 30 interceptions. That's hard to do. And, you look at those 30 interceptions, that's more possessions for your defense. That's more opportunities for their offense to score. And, that's less opportunities for your offense to score. So, Tampa was able to cut down on their turnovers greatly this past season. They had a more solid quarterback. But you look at it now for Jameis, is he ready to get in that position and be the guy for New Orleans?
You know, I know. I mean, I would never doubt Sean Payton. I think that guy is one of the most innovative play callers and play designers. His play design is second to none. You understand what I'm saying? He finds ways to get guys open. They do it every year without without a ton of talent on the offense, without a ton of speed. They'll get a speed guy here and there. Michael Thomas is always open. Why is that? He might be a good route runner, but how do you let this guy catch 150 passes the year before? I mean, that's the coach. That's the coaching. That's the timing with the quarterback. That's them being really, really smart football players because, there's bracket coverage. They're running all kinds of different kinds of robbers over there and everything. And they're not throwing interceptions over there. He's catching pass after pass. And can they duplicate that with Jameis Winston? Is Jameis Winston not Drew Brees? Of course, there's only one Drew Brees, but can he get somewhere close to it where Sean Payton can be himself as a play caller and a play designer, and he can still do what he does with Jameis Winston? Or does he have to change some things? Does he have to change the offense to fit what Jameis Winston does well? And for the most part, Jameis Winston throws the football down the field. He's got a much bigger arm than Drew Brees. Does that help Sean Payton? Does that allow him to do different things? I really don't have the answers to that till I see it. I would love to see exactly what he does with Sean Payton and Jameis Winston in that combination. I just don't know if Jameis Winston is the kind of quarterback that fits Sean Payton's style of offense. But, things can change. Maybe he believes he has to change. I mean, I really don't understand how you allow a quarterback to throw 30 interceptions. I don't even remember the last time I've seen that. The most interceptions I can remember offhand is the 20-something that Peyton Manning threw his rookie year. I think it was like 26. I could be wrong about that. I'm not staring at stats, but that's really ridiculous. I mean, for me, I just couldn't watch that many turnovers. I don't know how you do that. I mean, Bruce Arians, he's got a gut of steel, man. You keep calling those pass plays, Bruce Arians? He's got 30 interceptions. I mean, no risk it, no biscuit, but dang, I mean, how far does that go in your brain? I mean, I don't know. I'm really doubtful in that particular part of Jameis's game. Can he change that much? I mean, let's just say if he cuts down the interceptions in half, is that enough for you? If he can still get his 30 touchdowns, or can you have one without the other? So, and maybe Sean Payton's offense is that risk averse where it's not as much risk as what Bruce Arians does, and then inherently the interceptions aren't there. I don't know. There's a lot of things to answer there. I mean, Jameis, that's an enigma for me. I don't have the answers to that team's problems right now, and I wouldn't put it past them drafting a quarterback. There's some interesting quarterbacks that are going the mid to late round that I kind of sort of like a little bit. That could fit there. A guy like Kellen Mond, Texas A&M. Kind of mobile, not a big arm, pretty accurate, doesn't turn the ball over. These are the things I look for when I see quarterbacks, and that'll tell me whether or not I think they can be successful. These little minute details. Not turning the ball over. Are you accurate in a short area? Can you escape pressure? So that's me on the Saints, man.
Well, I think there's a possibility there. I'm not going to completely write them off. I mean, you look at Sean Payton's career, of course, he was the offensive coordinator of the New York Giants at one time. And a lot of people, for whatever reason, don't talk about that. But, he got to the Super Bowl with Kerry Collins, who was as his quarterback. And Kerry Collins was not a bad quarterback, of course. And then, of course, the next time around when he gets to the Super Bowl, he does it, with Drew Brees, who, of course, is going on to be a Hall of Famer. And, he set so many different passing records in this league. So, I mean, the talent is there for Jameis, but I think the biggest thing has to be, there has to be a mesh. Jameis obviously checking his ego, which I think he can do right now. And, Sean Payton saying, you know what, I don't have to like try to conform this guy to everything that I'm about, what I look for in my quarterback. It has to be some form of a blend. You look at the way that things change, the way that things ended rather, for Jameis and Tampa. And I looked at it as soon as the Bucks hired Bruce Arians, and I said, well, you know what? Bruce Arians is a quarterback coach. And if Jameis can't get his act together under Bruce Arians, I don't know if there's much hope for him. And of course, that was not the case. And like the turnovers, again, you said it. I mean, how do you throw 30 interceptions in a season? That's almost 2 interceptions a game. So if your quarterback is turning the football over that much, I guarantee you the defense doesn't have a lot of faith in him. You go back to Tampa this season, obviously the defense had much more faith in Tom Brady, even when he threw those interceptions. We saw him throw 3 picks in the second half of the NFC Championship game versus Green Bay, but the defense stepped up there and got it done. And of course, the rest is history. So, I mean, I look at Jameis, and you know what? This is going to be his opportunity to go out there and get something done. I said that there was going to be a huge quarterback carousel this offseason. I did a podcast on this about 6 or 7 weeks ago. And, my prediction is, still intact. We almost saw Russell Wilson go to the Chicago Bears. And if you're a Bears fan, you're thinking about, wow, we're going to get Russell Wilson. And then you turn around, and who do you get? Andy Dalton. I want to hear what you got to say about it.
It's funny. I read earlier today that he actually came out and said that he's QB1. And, Trubisky signed with the Buffalo Bills. All right. Hilarious. Right. And for me, I actually am a person that I don't hate Andy Dalton. I expected a lot more out of him when Dak Prescott got hurt last year. I expected the Cowboys to still be competitive because he had weapons. He had a good offense. And he went out there and he did not produce. And you can't really say to me that told you that you should be signing this guy to be your number one quarterback. Now, the funny thing to me is, and this is what I told my coaches in the coaches chat when I was talking to them about it today, why would you ever trade Russell Wilson? I don't care what you're offering me. You got a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. He's priceless. That's priceless, William. It's priceless to have a top 3 quarterback. I don't care what you're offering me. I'm not trading him. I don't have to trade him. You telling me I can keep him? I'm keeping him. What am I trading Russell Wilson for? Maybes, draft picks or maybes. Never, ever forget this. People get in love with these draft picks. Draft picks are maybes. You don't know what you're getting. As a sure thing, everybody thinks Trevor Lawrence is. Nobody knows how good he's going to be in the NFL. As good as these scouts are, he could go out there and Ryan Leaf it. Because guess what? There were people that thought Ryan Leaf was better than Peyton Manning. So, and I'm old enough to remember watching people say that. So, there were people that thought RG3 should have been drafted ahead of Andrew Luck. You can't take these draft picks and think that they're gonna do something off. When you have a proven commodity, someone as good as Russell Wilson. What did the Bears offer? 3 number 2s, 3 number 1s, and 2 players, and he still said no.
I mean, listen, I look at it like this. I feel for the Bears fans, and the reason why I say this is like, if you really want to peel back the surface, you can make a strong case that Jim McMahon was the last solid quarterback that they had. And I mean, how many years ago was that? I mean, you look at the Bears. This is a historic franchise. They're known for their defense, but they can't get it together at quarterback. I mean, you go back and look at Super Bowl 41. Peyton Manning got the MVP of that game. But I said it then, and I will continue to say it all of these years later. Rex Grossman did more to win that game for the Colts than Peyton Manning did. And you look at it, the names that they've had over the years at quarterback, and it just hasn't panned out. Eric Kramer, Cade McNown was another first-round pick of theirs.
Yeah, out of UCLA.
Right,
yeah.
and it didn't work. And you looked at Mitchell Trubisky, and, I want to talk about Mitchell Trubisky real quick because, number one, when I watched him play at North Carolina, there was absolutely nothing that stood out for me as far as his game is going to say, you know what, this guy is a top 5 pick. And not only was he a top 5 pick, the Bears swapped with San Francisco to move up to get him. They gave the 49ers multiple picks. And, if you're the Bears, not only did Mitchell Trubisky not work out, but if you're a Bears fan, you got to sit back and see Deshaun Watson was taken after,
Patrick Mahomes.
and Patrick Mahomes, and you're talking about arguably 1-1A as far as like the top young quarterbacks in the NFL right now. So it's a situation. I mean, the Bears cannot get out of their own way at quarterback. And just going back to Super Bowl 41 real quick, with that team with Lovie Smith, they had everything except the quarterback. Arguably the best arguably the best kick returner of all time at Devin Hester. You know, you look at that defense.
He's definitely the best in our era. It's not even close.
Peanut Tillman, Brian Urlacher, Lance Briggs, you know, Tommy Harris, so many other guys on there. You had the likes of Musa Muhammad at wide receiver, Thomas Jones, and Cedric Benson at running back. The Bears had everything except the quarterback, and for whatever reason, they can't get their act together. And I'm with you on Andy Dalton. I did a podcast right after the Dak Prescott injury, and I'm like, you know what? Dallas is still in a good shot to win this division because I gave Andy Dalton the benefit of the doubt because at the end of the day, he's not a bad quarterback. You know what I'm saying? He's not going to be out there and like remind people of John Elway. Don't get me wrong. But it's just that, you know what? For whatever reason, it simply does not come together. When you need him to step up, it's always like this all shucks, deer in the headlights look and mentality coming out of him, and it just doesn't come together. And now you're asking Andy Dalton to be the starting quarterback for the Chicago Bears in 2021. You know, for me, I'm not blown away by it because I just look at it. The Bears have basically wasted Khalil Mack because you remember when they gave up all those picks to get Khalil Mack from the Raiders, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, you know what? You got Khalil Mack, you got Roquan Smith, they had Leonard Floyd. Leonard Floyd didn't work out for them. You know, they had Eddie Jackson in that secondary, and I'm like, you know what? The Bears is like putting it together once again on defense, but
they just cut Kyle Fuller.
See? And they never got it, and they never got it together on offense. So, listen, I'm not blown away by Andy Dalton going to the Bears, man.
Well, let me go back to that draft thing, and I love the quarterback conversation. So for me, right, either I'm drafting production or I'm drafting talent, right? So follow me down this path, right? You want a quarterback. You're looking in the draft. You drafting production or talent or some combination of the two. So let's go back down that path, right? You had Deshaun Watson. Didn't he win back-to-back national titles? Wasn't he like the best player on the field?
Barely lost the year before and got the walk-off against Alabama.
Right. So you drafting, so you pass on a winner, right? Right? So then everybody sees Patrick Mahomes, you know, at his pro days, they watching, you see the talent, right? Now he didn't win in college, but you saw the talent. So now you got the production and the talent. Now, and let's not discredit Watson's talent either, right? You got talent and production with Watson. You got a ridiculous talent in Mahomes. And how the hell you come up with goddamn Trubisky? He's short. You know, somebody's got to tell me. I would love to have sat in the room with them scouts and have those guys convince me to trade up to draft that guy over those two. You want a quarterback? Okay, look, we got this guy, we got that. What do you want? You want the talent or you want the production with the talent? How do you mess that up? You draft the guy. I mean, not to say Trubisky doesn't have talent. Well, I mean, I could see the talent. There's some talent there. But he was at North Carolina ACC, and he didn't do anything. So you mean to tell me you're going to take that guy over these two guys? I would have loved to hear the conversation with him. Sometimes to be a fly on the wall would be priceless. I would pay some money to have sat there and say, you convinced me to draft this guy here over these two guys. And they look really bad now because they did that after they traded for Khalil Mack. Remember, they didn't give that pick to the Raiders that year. The Raiders didn't get those picks to the year after. You understand what I'm saying? I was mad about it because when the Raiders traded Khalil Mack, they didn't get the Bears pick that year. The Bears pick that year was high, and they ended up keeping that pick.
Yeah,
and essentially, since the Raiders traded Khalil Mack to the Bears, their records are almost identical. Would you believe that?
I mean, you look at it, and I mean, the Bears, even, you know, a couple of years ago, they were able to win the NFC North with Mitchell Trubisky as their quarterback. But, you know, Mitchell Trubisky has never been a guy that really just, you know, blows you away. not a fan of Matt Nagy, the head coach. I'm not a fan of the Bears front office. And I mean, you look at it, and they just consistently find a way to shoot themselves, in the foot. But speaking of these quarterbacks, how do you feel about the Dak Prescott contract?
So market value is market value. We'll never forget this. Nobody did it better than Kirk Cousins, and he's just above average, right? Barely, right? He goes in that tier somewhere behind where Carr sits and Prescott sits, right? And if you want to put Prescott in front of these guys, I have my preference, but I'll keep my opinion to myself in that particular space. Because of the franchise tag, and because Dallas wasn't smart enough to pay him earlier, because see, that's the real trick. See, when the Raiders traded Khalil Mack, they paid Carr that year. Now this year, coming up, Carr makes $22 million. Wouldn't you have loved to have paid Dak $22 million? What they should have did, once they realized he was good, they should have paid him, gave the contract a couple of outs in a couple of years. So look, if they would have paid him when he first started playing well, right? Because he was a 4th-round draft pick. And they leave some outs in the contract and he starts to play bad, then you can just cut him with no dead money. Because right now, the Raiders could cut Derek Carr right this year with no dead money. It's a smart contract. Because they waited to pay him, they paid everybody else. They paid Amari Cooper after they traded for him, $100 million. They paid $100 million for the running back, Ezekiel Elliott. They were paying some of the linemen. I think Martin got a big deal. They were paying everybody else. They paid DeMarcus Lawrence. You're paying everybody else. None of those guys are as important quarterback.
Right.
You got to do your housekeeping correctly. And that's why the Cowboys got messed up. So now they had to pay him now. And you cannot argue with that contract, William, one bit. If you find somebody that argues with that contract right now in this day and age and with what everybody else is making, they're telling you something that's not true. The Cowboys had to pay him what they paid him. If you ask me, he could have kept going. He could have stayed this year, made them franchise him again this year, right? Got another guaranteed 30-some-odd million. And then after this year, they couldn't franchise him no more. And if he played good again this year, guess what?
You would have got more money next year. I mean,
it's Kirk Cousins came out in the interview and said, Dak Prescott, the franchise tag is your friend.
Hey, listen, I mean, you look at it, and for my money, Jerry Jones was caught between a rock and a hard place because Jerry initially did not want to commit so much money to the quarterback position because as good as Dak Prescott played, he knew that, the people around him were also important on offense. The line, the running game, this, that, and the third. But to me, I think the best thing that happened to Dak Prescott was him getting hurt last year and, Dallas, struggling as much as they did because, Jerry probably sat back and looked at it and said, this division is terrible. I still got an opportunity to win. But then, like he didn't expect the Cowboys to play as bad as they did. And I mean, looked at their defense last year for most of the year. They were terrible, and then they still had an opportunity to win the NFC East at the end. But of course, they blew that game on the road to the Giants to end it. And, that was it. I look at this contract, Dak is a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. And, I think Jerry wanted a little financial flexibility. He got some of it, but Dak also got paid as well because you're talking about a guy. He got more than $30 million last year from the franchise tag. Now you're talking about a guy that's going to get about $75 million this season when it's all said and done. So Dak really went to the bank because you're talking about more than $100 million. So
and don't forget the year before. Remember, you can't get franchised more than 3 years in a row.
Correct.
So he got franchised the year before at 20-something. Then, Russell Wilson got all that money.
Right.
So remember, you get the average of the top 3 highest paid players in your, and then Pat Mahomes got paid. So every time somebody else got paid, and the Cowboys had to franchise him, guess what? Now the franchise tag goes up, you fools.
Yeah.
Pay these guys early. When you realize you got something special, try to pay them early. Now a smart quarterback that knows he's going to get paid eventually won't take those early deals. And maybe Dak turned down some decent deals because that's what I heard. I heard he was turning them down left and right. I heard he turned down some pretty good deals before but he forced their hand. He did exactly what Kirk Cousins did. Somebody with him says, nope, we're going to keep waiting. And look what you just said. That's $100 million in guaranteed money. $100 million in guaranteed money. That's what you're looking for when you play in the NFL. Because the contracts aren't guaranteed. You want that guaranteed money.
Because you know what I mean? It comes down to these quarterbacks. They're looking to break the bank, be the highest paid guy, this, that, and a third. And, Dak got his bread. So, like I said, Jerry was put, in a hard spot. He kind of did it to himself. So don't expect me to sit back here and shed a tear for him. But, you look at it and, on the surface, it looks like everybody, walked away happy. But, for me, there's one quarterback signing that a lot of people aren't talking about, and that's Ryan Fitzpatrick going to Washington. And I say this, I look at it, Ryan Fitzpatrick can have his good moments and he can have his bad moments. But, you put Ryan Fitzpatrick on that team, and then you look at what Washington is able to do on defense, especially with their defensive line. If they can just get a quarterback that can, somewhat keep it together. I mean, not taking anything away from Alex Smith, because I think it was a great story for him coming back from that injury last year because nobody gave him a chance. But then, unfortunately, for Washington, they had to turn into the youngster in their wildcard game with Tyler Heineke. But you look at it with that defense, Ryan Fitzpatrick could find a way to do just enough to get Washington, back to the playoffs this year.
That guy is scary. He scares me. Okay? You know why? Because he does not care. He drops back. He plants his foot. He makes his read, and he lets it go, William. And whatever happens, happens. Some games he's going to throw for 400. Some games he's going to throw 4 interceptions. Mm-hmm. That guy is absolutely amazing. I don't really think people realize how amazing Ryan Fitzpatrick is. I'm watching the Raiders-Dolphins game, and the minute they took Tua out and put him in, I knew we were in trouble. The second they put him in, I said, uh-oh. And if you were watching the game before that, it looked like Dolphins had no chance to win the game. They couldn't even move the football. They weren't even getting first downs. They put this guy in. All of a sudden, listen, I'm surprised somebody else didn't try and sign him. Like, I'm the Patriots. He's the perfect guy. And maybe they don't want a guy like him. I don't know what they're thinking. But if you ask me, if I had to pick between Ryan Fitzpatrick and that Cam Newton that I saw, I'm taking Fitzmagic, man. Listen, that guy is something to him, man. I don't know what it is, man. Every year he has 2 or 3 games where you're like, this guy's amazing. He does some rabbit out of the hat ridiculousness, and he win the game.
Well, the sentimental part of me wanted Ryan Fitzpatrick to sign with New England just for the simple fact that then he would have officially played for all 4 teams.
Every team, yeah.
But I mean, you look at it, you consistently try to find a way to write him off. But, he goes out there and gets it done. He's basically this generation Steve DeBerg. Steve DeBerg would bounce around from team to team, but the next thing you know, Steve DeBerg's out there starting a quarterback, and, he's doing a pretty good job, man. So, I look at Fitzy, and again, I know that there are going to be some people who are immediately going to say, well, you know what? Dallas got Dak Prescott back. He's healthy. This is their division. I think Washington is definitely going to have something to say about it, especially with that D-line of theirs, man.
Well, see, this is what happens when you draft guys and you get production out them early. You end up with a lot of good players at once. And this is where the NFL is because of how the salary caps is set up and the rookie contracts are set up. So, they hit on their draft picks. They have a ridiculous defensive line that they could never pay had they had to sign each and one of these guys to a top-tier contract.
Right.
But because they drafted all of them, they got control of all of these guys for 4 to 5 years, and they have to win now, William. That team needs to win within the next 2 or 3 years, or they're going to lose everybody. No. The only body they're going to end up keeping is Chase Young. Right. Didn't Ryan Kerrigan leave already? Isn't he gone? He left, right?
I believe so.
So, and he was pretty good. They had good players there, already. So it's not like the cupboard was bare. They got Allen. They got Chase Young. They got Montez Sweat. They have a lot of talent up front. Those guys are athletes, man. They're some of the best defensive line athletes to come out in the draft in the last 5 to 6 years are all on that one team. So if they can somehow get production out the quarterback, because they have decent weapons on offense.
Right.
Terry McLaurin can play. Who's the running back? They got Chris Thomas. I think he was hurt. I don't know who their back was this year, but they have talent. They have a decent offensive line. I wouldn't put it past them. You're right. They could be a nice size sleeper for that division. Especially with you don't know what's going to happen with Saquon Barkley when he comes back for the Giants. Still don't know what Daniel Jones is or who he is as a quarterback. You guys signed Mike Glennon as the backup. He's like the ultimate Statue of Liberty. That's what they should call him, the Statue of Liberty. Because I was scared to death when he was on the Raiders and he had to come in. He just looked like he was waiting to get sacked. He just dropped back like, sack me. If any blitzer came free or anybody missed a block, he's going down. Okay? At least Danny Dimes can get away. So
yeah, I'm not. Listen, I was never sold on Daniel Jones from the day that the Giants drafted him. I put him in the same category as Mitchell Trubisky. I saw him play at college. Nothing jumped off the screen to me to say, you know what, this guy has the it factor. You look at the Giants' production at the quarterback position last year. To say it was terrible would be a compliment. You looked at it, and if the Giants had some type of quarterback, they probably would have won 11 games last year, just due to the fact that the way that their defense was playing. I know that they lost Dalvin Tomlinson in free agency to the Minnesota Vikings. They went out there and gave Leonard Williams the big deal. But the Giants, I still think that they're going to be good defensively, but their problems are on offense. They don't have, any receivers who can stretch the field. I know that they are talking with Kenny Golladay, the former Detroit Lions wide receiver.
According to my sources, he signed.
He signed with
and you guys drafted the immortal John Ross III, Mr. 422 himself. So,
it's funny because, the Giants are in a position, and I know that there are going to be some people like in their mock drafts that have them linked to the likes of Jalen Waddle, at a wide receiver coming out of Alabama. We'll have to wait and see. But, for the Giants, you look at it, the Leonard Williams signing is good, but at the same time, I think part of it was the fact that they feel like he was a good locker room guy, a good leader. He did, play better, as the season progressed and did become more of a pass rusher. But I think their biggest thing is they need more out of the quarterback position. And I've always been a proponent. I've never been a fan of teams giving the keys to the franchise to these young quarterbacks so early. And then if you're the Giants, you need to get yourself a veteran quarterback who's going to push Daniel Jones. That didn't happen last year with Colt McCoy. Colt McCoy is a career backup. And, Mike Glennon is a career backup's backup. So, it's a situation, there's not going to be anybody there who, who's going to push Danny Dimes, for reps.
Well, you know why this happens these days. These young quarterbacks are playing because these teams are realizing because they are drafting these guys high in the draft. They don't want to waste a year of control over these players where they can be paying other sides of the ball, right? So if I got this guy on his rookie deal and I can pay everybody else, he's still on his rookie deal, and I don't have to extend him, I don't have to renegotiate his contract or any of those things, and he's good right away, you got lightning in the bottle. Now, conversely, on the other end, if you draft these guys and they're not good right away and they're not producing at a high level right away, then what happens is you do not win. Chicago Bears. You got a lot of these teams that you have to take these risks. I'll even throw the Rams. They kind of sort of got production out of Goff. They gave him the big deal. Then they realized he wasn't it, which is why you're going to see a lot more of these teams put outs into these contracts maybe after a year or two in where they could cut you with no dead money. So,
you look at all of these teams that took quarterbacks so early on in this process, in the last couple of years in the draft, and now teams, have been willing to get away from them. The Carson Wentz deal, of course, for a few years ago with the Philadelphia Eagles, and now, you have a situation where, he's now a member of the Indianapolis Colts. We can go on and on and on about teams who are been reaching to take quarterbacks early, and of course Jared Goff as well with the Rams, and now he is a member of the Detroit Lions. So you look at it, and it's just a situation where it's just like, hey, what do you do, man? Like you really have to do your homework. It's a lot of risk that's thrown into the mix as well. But I mean, me personally, I look at it, you really have to do your homework inside and out to take care of your business, at that quarterback position. And, some teams, they put themselves in this quote unquote rock and a hard place with it. And now, luckily for the Rams, who you just mentioned, they go out there and get a veteran quarterback like Matt Stafford. Matt, he's always been a gunslinger. He's always going to have that gunslinger's mentality. But the Rams are hopeful that, that like this could be the final piece of the puzzle to not only get them back to the Super Bowl and win it. We saw Jalen Ramsey restructure his deal this offseason. They still have Aaron Donald. I can't say it enough. Them trading Michael Brockers to the Lions is going, a lot of people aren't talking about it, but Michael Brockers was a big part of their defensive line. I was a fan of his since he played at LSU. And, that was one of the picks by former Rams head coach Jeff Fisher, dating back to the days for the Rams when they were still in St. Louis. But you look at this Rams team, they feel like they have it, all together now with Jared Goff. I mean, not with Jared Goff. I'm sorry, Matthew Stafford. I, for one, am not sold on it. Another team for me that, did jump out and did make some moves in that division that, at first, you look back and said, wow, that was a reach. But you look at the Arizona Cardinals, they went out there and, J.J. Watt, I, for one, really thought that J.J. Watt was going to go to either Tampa, take less money and go to Tampa, or possibly go to Pittsburgh to play with his brother TJ. And he chose Arizona. And of course, Arizona paid him more money. But you look at that defense for
Well,
Arizona.
you know, both his brothers are on that team.
Yeah.
Derek
TJ,
Watts there too.
right.
I don't know how you passed that up. Honestly,
Right.
I'm confused.
But I mean, you look at it with that defense in Arizona, they do have the edge rushers now if Watt is healthy. But then they also went out there and picked up AJ Green. And you look at it, one perspective, you can look at it and say, well, how much does AJ Green have left in the tank? And on the flip side, you're going to say, well, you know what? AJ Green really hasn't played a lot in the last couple of years, so he could be fresh. So this could be, a low risk, low reward situation for the Arizona Cardinals, at least with AJ Green. I mean, I know that they did give JJ Watt some money, but I really pegged them to be a playoff team in 2020, and they were unable to get over the hump. So you just have to wonder, have they done enough to take that next step and get to the next level and be a playoff team in 2021 with their signings?
That's the thing when you draft these 30-somethings. You don't know what you're going to get. You could get lightning in the bottle for a couple of years, or you could get, fall off a cliff and still have to pay. I'd be scared of AJ Green. He's been hurt the last 2 years, but if they get anything close to what he used to be, forget about it. I mean, can you imagine having to cover him and DeAndre Hopkins?
Yeah.
They get one good season out of JJ Watt. So, it's almost like they went into a win now type of scenario in Arizona. They got elderly good players on almost at the twilight. Are they past their prime? Do they have another couple of good years left? Only way we're gonna find out is next year when they line up and strap on those strap on those helmets and they play. I'm gonna be watching. I want to see how AJ Green looks. They gave him $8 million.
Well, I'm looking at it. You already have Larry Fitzgerald, and Larry Fitzgerald. He's still in the NFL. He's not the Larry Fitzgerald, of course, that he was 9-10 years ago. Of course,
He didn't retire.
no, he's still around, man. So it's like you look at it. You have AJ Green, of course. You got DeAndre Hopkins, who's arguably the best wide receiver in football. I think the onus is going to be on Kyler Murray to go out there and step it up and take it to another level. Can he do it? Absolutely. I'm just seeing, it's just a matter of him just being more productive, like in the pocket. That's the biggest thing. The Sandlot football style. Of course, that's been, Kyler Murray's pedigree going back to his days, in college at Oklahoma. But that's going to be the next step for Arizona. Can they find a way to take that next step? That division is still going to be very competitive. You look at the Rams, who we just talked about, the 49ers, they're looking to get healthy, and, you want to see what they're going to get out of the draft as well. And then, of course, the Seattle Seahawks. And, I mean, are the Seahawks going to be able to smooth things over with Russell Wilson? That's going to be the big thing, for that division.
If anybody paid attention to what he said he was upset about, you would have to honor what he was trying to get across. All he wants them to do is to get him some guys that are going to block. The guy's been running for his life for 3 years. They traded for Dwayne Brown a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's put it in perspective. They traded 2 first-round picks for a safety, and this guy's running for his life.
Yeah.
2 first-round picks for Jamal Adams, and this guy's running for his life. So if I was him, I'd be upset too. What is it that he's supposed to do there? He's supposed to just sit back, relax, and watch Pete Carroll trade first-round picks for players on defense every year, and not one time is he. So they traded for Gabe Jackson. Give up a first-round pick to the Raiders to get Gabe Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Gabe Jackson is a more than solid guard. I would consider him above average guard. The reason why the Raiders decided to part ways is because he's making $10 million a year. They traded Rodney Hudson to the Cardinals. I don't know if you knew that.
Right, I did see that.
For a third-round pick. He's making $14 million a year. So, I think in Oakland, not Oakland, I'm sorry. In Las Vegas, this is more of a reformulating of the funds, a reallocating of where the money is being spent at. As opposed to certain teams where everything is in one place. They've been trying to give a patchwork offensive line to Russell Wilson for years. Ever since he's been there. So
yeah. I mean,
he just wants to be protected. So they better draft the offensive line. Wait, they don't have a pick.
Yeah, they
got a second rounder.
They don't have their pick. I mean, they gave it up to the Jets for a safety who really isn't like an additional linebacker, in the way he plays. But you look at it, for Seattle, for my money, I see them and I say, you know what? Russell Wilson was that missing piece for them when they won that championship back in 2013. They just needed the quarterback. They had beast mode. They had that stout defense, and they just needed that quarterback to get them over the hump. And I mean, if you go back and you look at that Super Bowl victory over Denver, Russell Wilson didn't have a big game, and he didn't need to have a big game because it was a situation. Look, you looked at the way that defense got after the Denver Broncos offense, and you looked at the way that Marshawn Lynch ran the ball. And, unfortunately for Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll lost that team, on the final play of Super Bowl number 49, or the final offensive play, rather, for Seattle in Super Bowl number 49, when instead of giving the football to Marshawn Lynch, he tried to go for the slant pass. And, of course, the rest is history. And, that defense was never the same. The Seahawks have not come close to having that same amount of talent on defense. Granted, don't get me wrong, you still have KJ Wright and you still have Bobby Wagner. But, they have consistently tried to, plug guys in on that defensive line. We saw them go out and get a Sheldon Richardson a couple of years ago. We saw them make the trade for Carlos Dunlap last season. It simply has not worked out. And, Seattle, they have not done a good job, of drafting and filling holes on that offensive line. Remember, once upon a time, they had Alex Mack and Max Unger, on that O-line. And, you've never really come close to, replacing those guys. I know that they picked up the veteran Mike Iupati. It just has not worked out. And, I don't care who you are. No quarterback likes to run for his life because, Russell has the reputation of being a scrambler. He scrambles, yes, but he scrambles to give his receivers time downfield. Now, Russell is dropping back, and this is basically he's got D linemen in his face. And if you go back and look at that playoff loss to the Rams, Russ really never had an opportunity to get it going because that Rams defense was coming after him. So, I mean, Seattle needs to go out there and do something. But like you said, now they've given up their first-round pick to the Jets, which I think is 22nd or 23rd. So, listen, you got to go out there and get something done. But Russ is just frustrated, man. And now they got to try to smooth things over, especially they were dangling him out there to the Bears and stuff like that. So, we're going to see what happens between now and the start of the season for the Hawks.
I mean, I love to watch Russell Wilson go, man.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I look at it, Russ is still one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but, no quarterback is good without an offensive line. I don't care who you are. No quarterback is good. We're looking at everything that's been going on around this league. One thing that has really surprised me, the Tennessee Titans, they've been cutting defensive backs left and right, rather. Adoree Jackson, Malcolm Butler, and Kenny Vaccaro. And, I keep saying this about the Titans. They gave a lot of money to Ryan Tannehill. And, Ryan Tannehill, like he was a reclamation project, excuse me. And, of course, Mike Vrabel was ready to move on from Marcus Mariota, another quarterback who was taken early who didn't work out with his initial team. And then, at some point, the other shoe has to drop for the Titans and their magic. And I say that because of Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry was able to get to 2,000 yards last season. But you look at how many carries this guy has had over the last couple of years. And it's like when you like study the history of the NFL like we do, you know that you're going to get, like, if you're going to give that running back 3 or 4 straight seasons of 250 carries or more, at some point the production is going to like really fall off a cliff. And I look at it and I'm just sitting back waiting, and I'm saying, okay, at some point Derrick Henry has to slow down, and when he slows down, the whole dynamic of this Tennessee Titans team changes.
I got a scenario for you.
Mm-hmm.
So today, the Raiders signed Kenyon Drake. I don't know if you saw that signing.
No, I didn't.
Raiders Twitter went crazy. We don't need another running back. They're going crazy. Some people love it. Some people hate it. Josh Jacobs had 250 carries the last 2 years in a row. Banged up every year. Do not rule out Tennessee trying to get their hands on one of these running backs coming out this year. I mean, look at that. Can you imagine 2 Alabama running backs, one coming in behind the other? They want to run the football. He likes that identity. Look at how many running backs they used to keep in New England. He's a New England guy.
Yeah.
Let's not rule it out. If they get another back to give this guy a real break, now he may not want to break. That guy's like a cyborg, man. Have you ever seen his workouts?
Yeah.
They look ridiculous. I mean, it doesn't look like he's slowing down. He doesn't look banged up to me. But you're right. Normally, these guys, they get to 2,000, and then next thing you know, it's all the way down. The next year, it's 1,200. Then the year after that is 800. They might get up to 1,100 the year after that. But they don't – you're not going to be running for 2,000 yards every year in the NFL. It's just not set up that way. So, they need that. They're going to need someone to carry the load. And speaking of Tannehill, he's a total product of the system. He is effective because of Derrick Henry. So one without the other does not work. Oh, don't worry about it. If Henry's hurt, Tannehill could take over and carry. No, he can't. Cannot carry offense without that play action pass team that is created by Derrick Henry. Now, they let Corey Davis go. He was a hot draft pick. He's never really lived up to the billing, but that A.J. Brown, man, that guy's a stud. He's a stud, but he's he got a little hurt. So, they got cut on their cornerbacks, but it looks like they're going to need to get a wide receiver, and they might need a backup running back over there in Tennessee too. And wasn't John Smith comes from them, right? So
yeah.
They need a tight end.
They lost a lot, man.
So, that's going to be hard to duplicate, and they're going to have to get somebody that can inline block because they run the football so much. So they can't just go and get a neo tight end. So I don't know what happens in Tennessee. We could be looking at a down year for them.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at the way that they play, and like there's certain teams, when they get to that AFC Championship game or NFC Championship game, you're like, you know what, the time is now for them to strike. That was Tennessee last year, and because success is never guaranteed from year to year in the National Football League. So you have to make the most of those opportunities when you get them. A team like Buffalo, I think they might be a little bit more equipped to find a way to build off of that than Tennessee was after, their run to the AFC Championship game in 2019. With that said, I'm not saying that Buffalo is going to be able to take that next step, but I think they're a little bit more equipped than Tennessee was at this point in the game. You look at it on the AFC side, I mean, as of right now, the East, I think, is Buffalo still to lose. I still call it the AFC Central. Of course, it's the AFC North. You look at it, Pittsburgh lost Bud Dupree. Of course, he was hurt in the second half of the season. He signed with the Titans. That's going to be an interesting look, for them. I mean, he was a solid part of what they were doing on the defensive side of the ball. Baltimore, of course, lost Matthew Judon. I know Cleveland was making a push to go out there and get J.J. Watt, and it just didn't happen. Cincinnati, they're still building. So, I mean, that division's up for grabs.
Well, let's talk about it like this. You name two teams that draft extremely well in those areas. Pittsburgh has been replacing those rush linebackers since Kevin Green,
And
Greg
Greg
Lloyd.
Lloyd.
They've been replacing those guys. They always have somebody like that.
Right.
So we're gonna close our eyes. We're gonna go to sleep. Right? The draft is gonna come, and they'll have somebody else out there playing almost as good. So in Baltimore, they've been drafting those guys too, since since what? Mike McQuarrie and
Peter Boulware,
Peter
Terrell
Boulware,
Suggs.
Jamie Sharper.
Yeah.
They're going to find somebody else. I mean, this is why they let these guys go. It was very weird, going back to the Patriots, to watch them go out and splurge in free agency, because as history will tell you, Bill Belichick only paid corners in free agency. He would only go after corners and pay them a lot of money. He would never go after these other positions and wide receivers, but they were so talent devoid last year.
Yeah.
It was almost like he was forced to say, okay, we got to do some out of character this year. I'm going to have to go out and pay. I'm really shocked they gave Nelson Aguilar all of that money. I just don't see him being able to duplicate that type of production that he did in Oakland, just because A, the quarterback play is not going to be the same. B, the offensive coordinator doesn't have the same style of game planning and attacking defenses. New England never even threw the ball on the field till he had Randy Moss, and then when they got rid of Randy Moss, everything was dink and dunk. So I just really don't know.
I got two words for that: Robert Kraft. And the reason is, since Bill Belichick has been the head coach / general manager of the Patriots, he's basically had free reign to do whatever he wants. And the only real time that Robert Kraft, stepped in and did something was, of course, a couple of years ago when Bill Belichick really wanted to trade Tom Brady to San Francisco and keep Jimmy Garoppolo. And that was when Robert Kraft put his foot down and said no. And you look at it, this situation, in my opinion, I think in 2020, Belichick went out there and tried to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to try to prove that I could do it without Tom Brady. And of course, that was not the case. And we saw how inefficient that they were, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They were still solid on defense, even though they didn't have Dante Hightower and Patrick Chung. And now, of course, Patrick Chung has officially retired. But it was a situation where it was a little bit different than it was from the year before, because it's easier for defense to hold a team to 17 points when you know that you have a quarterback that can get you 27. It's tougher to do it when you're still trying to go out there and hold the defense to 17 points, but you have an offense that's probably only going to get you 13. So that means you basically have to go out there and play perfect. And that's what the Patriots were doing last year. Now, they have Chase Vinovich at outside linebacker. I think, he's a stud in the making. They brought back Dietrich Wise. Bill loves those veterans, those versatile veterans in that secondary. They got J.C. Jackson. That Stephon Gilmore injury late kind of changed things. So I think they went out there and got Jalen Mills. You still got the McCourty brothers, of course. But it's all about trying to find that balance on offense. And listen, I think Robert Kraft told Bill, listen, we got this cap space. You need to go out there and get it done. But at the same time, it's like, Bill Belichick, and a lot of people didn't start talking about this enough until this past season. Bill Belichick has done a terrible job for so many years when it comes to drafting. I mean, this side of Gronkowski, he's really missed on a lot of his guys, especially like their first round guys. And, it's one of those where on the surface, you would say, you know what? Robert Kraft needs to go to Bill Belichick and say, you know what? I need to go find a general manager for you, and I just want you to go out there and be a coach. But the problem is this: how do you tell a head coach who has won 6 Super Bowl championships that you cannot get it done at the as far as being a guy who's going to go out there and get the talent together for the squad? How can you go out there and say that to a guy? And, for my money, if you do that, if you're the Patriots, you then lose Bill Belichick as a head coach. So I think Robert Kraft, in that sense, was putting a rock in between a rock and a hard place. But I do think that Robert Kraft did come in and say, you know what, hey, listen, we can't have this anymore. You got to go out there and you got to try to find some talent, at least something that's better than what we had at the like, especially on offense this past season. And that's what I think they did. I think what they're going to try to do is, I think they're going to try to go to Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith more, especially like in a short passing game to try to free things up for Nelson Aguilar. But like we said before, Cam Newton's not the guy I think that can consistently throw the ball deep down the field at this point in his career. So I mean, the Patriots are a very, very interesting dynamic.
They're going to be something that you want to go and pay attention to. I mean, it's
Right.
a lot of new players. They got 5 new starters essentially in offense, 2 new tight ends, not a new quarterback, but then 2 new wide receivers. They have to create chemistry. I mean, I don't know. I just don't know how you microwave offense in an NFL. If you look at it, you don't really see teams with that much turnover actually make huge strides. I mean, but I guess one can argue that the offense was so inept last year that it's not going to be something that we're going to be worried about it being any worse than it was. I mean, look, literally 8 touchdown passes. I'm not sure Stidham threw any, and I want to say maybe a position player maybe threw one,
Yeah.
but Edelman's a free agent. I mean, they're not bringing him back. So there we are. There we are with the Patriots. We have it set up to where we're in uncharted territory again. And in my opinion, I just don't know if it's smart for Belichick to roll out like how he rolled out last year. You rolled out with Cam Newton and Jarrett Stidham. You roll with that, got you nowhere. So you bring him back, you pay him more money. Like, he played good. I'm confused. They gave him a $1 million contract. You bring him back. You pay him more money this year. He threw 8 touchdown passes. I just don't get it. I'm confused. I got to scratch my head on that one.
Well,
8 touchdown passes, Will. 8 touchdown passes. You pay the guy more money. I'm confused. I'm totally confused. They gave him what he had a $1 million contract last year?
Yeah.
Listen, maybe I'm a little bit hard on Cam. Like I said, I was never really a huge fan of him. Of course, he was a great, great player for years in Carolina. But, more of a runner than a thrower. And then you get him after he's hurt, and he played for 1 year, and then now he's there. You gave him more money. I don't know. Maybe they know something we don't. Maybe he played hurt again last year. Maybe he's healthy now. Maybe he goes out there and he throws 20 touchdowns this year.
Well, I mean,
Shuts everybody up.
For the first time in a long time, it's a possibility of him being healthy. On top of that, maybe being in the offense 2 years in a row, playing devil's advocate. We'll have to wait and see. But one final thing, and of course, I saved the best for last for you. I wanted to get your opinion on this. I mean, Yannick Ngakoue, signing with the Las Vegas Raiders. I wanted to see how you feel about him joining the Silver and Black.
Well, let's get into that. I mean, listen, the Raiders had to do something. Okay, we were at the bottom of the barrel in sacks last year, but here's my thing about Ngakoue. He's almost non-existent versus the run. He's a very small defensive end. I'm not sure what he plays at, but if I had to guess, he's probably in the 240s. He does not, set the edge in the run. We have 2 defensive ends that can actually do that. So did we just pay for a situational pass rusher? Because I'm not sure if they're playing this guy on first or second down with the first unit. Because we have 2 really big, stout D ends that can play the run on first and second down. So now, is that smart to play this guy who isn't good against the run on first and second down and allow teams to gash us early in the game? So I'm not sure about that. But they had to do something. I don't know what the plan is for Ngakoue. But there's a reason why he got to Minnesota. They got rid of him. There's a reason why they didn't really want to keep him in Baltimore. Did we have to pay him? Did the Raiders have to pay him a lot of money? No. But, I really don't know, Will. I mean, he's not necessarily my cup of tea out there. I mean, the kid has talent, and he is what the team needs, which is a speedy pass rush of somebody that's going to get in that backfield with some explosiveness, because they didn't really have any explosive players in the front 7 besides one of the linebackers. That's it. Everybody else is big and slow. So, we're going to have to see how this works out. But I got a better conversation. They totally obliterated the offensive line.
Yeah.
They traded three of the starters, three of the five starters they traded, and one they cut.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it for the silver and black. I mean, the first half of the season last year, they did give you the premise that said, "Hey, you know what? They're going to be in a mix to be a playoff team." And of course, the second half of the season, it just didn't come together. You know, the Raiders had a ton of issues on the defensive side of the ball, and of course, it started with their ability to create pressure up front. You know, the Raiders are a very interesting dynamic. I mean, you look at it, and I mean, that division, of course, is still Kansas City to lose. You know, the Chargers are bringing in a new head coach, and now he's got to get on the same page with Justin Herbert at quarterback. You look at Denver. You know, Drew Lock has shown some potential. You know, like as far as being the quarterback, or like finally a quarterback that John Elway has hit on. You know, you had a veteran presence, like as far as the edge rushers for Denver with Von Miller and you know Bradley Chubb. But you know, the Raiders are sitting there. If they can
I
get
mean,
their if they can get their act together, maybe they could sneak in as a playoff team. But I mean, we'll have to wait.
listen, and back to Ngakwe sign. I might have been happier with Melvin Ingram. I
Mm.
just feel like he's just not stout enough at the point of attack to play in the early downs. And then when you pay these guys over this money, you're gonna play them on what? Situational, long yardage, third down. Like I'm really am confused as to how they want to do it, but I guess they felt like they had to sign a name in order to bring it to a boil. But let's go into the AFC West now. The Raiders signed Nick Martin. All these things are happening as we're talking. So they
Mhm.
just signed Nick Martin. So um, they just replaced Rodney Hudson. So up front now you got Colton Miller, pretty solid kid now. You know, he was the first round pick, everybody questioned. They re-signed Incognito, the ageless wonder at this point, because if you pop in any tape, his tape was amazing when he was healthy. You can forget about it. Like 37. His tape was ridiculous. So then you got Nick Martin. We re-signed our swing tackle, swing guard, Denzel Good. So if you ask me, I don't know if they sign a player to play right tackle or if they draft a player. But for someone who watched every single Raider game last year, Trent Brown didn't play much. Incognito was hurt all year, and the team still produced on offense. So Gabe Jackson, who they traded, did not play that great. Rodney Hudson, who was revered throughout the league, did not block well in the run game. So is this the end of the world? Probably not. I guess they felt like they were spending too much money on the offensive line, which is true, because between those three players, with Trent Brown making 14 million almost, or whatever he was making, and you had Gabe Jackson making 9 and Hudson making 13. How can you play defenders if you're putting that much money into the O line? And then Colt Miller was a first round pick. He wasn't on the cheap either. So they had to reallocate the money. 70% of the cap was spent on offense. 70%. So here you go. This is why they cut these guys and they brought in lesser expensive players, because they weren't getting elite production. Because if they got elite production out of those guys, that team would have made the playoffs. Those guys were just okay. So, and that's just me being honest. And I love Hudson and I love Gabe Jackson, Raiders drafted him, homegrown talent. I love to see that. But at the same time, you got to do what's right for the team. Now, let's dig into this AFC West. So, Raiders signed Solomon Thomas. Let's see if we get something out of that guy. He was a high draft pick out of Stanford.
Right.
You said Ngakoue. All right, so we're doing okay. Denver. I watched Denver twice a year. We play them. I watched a couple of their games. I'm going to say, William, Drew Lock's not it, brother. They're going to have to find somebody else. They literally have almost every other thing else there. They have so much talent on that offense. It's scary. It's scary, William. They have tall receivers, short receivers. They got Sutton, they got Judy, they got KJ Hamler, and they got another kid, Patrick, that's pretty good. Then they got Fant, they got a tight end, right? Then they had Gordon and Lindsey. Everything was set up for this kid to play good, and he didn't.
Well, go
And
figure.
the O-line wasn't that bad either.
Well, I mean,
He just didn't play well.
go figure. You know, John Elway, one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, has had a problem, finding that guy at quarterback. I mean, Brock Osweiler was one of his picks, Paxton Lynch. I remember you. I mean, you figured the only real signing that he made at quarterback was Peyton Manning, and I mean, that was Peyton Manning on his last leg. And of course, Peyton Manning, he still had something in the tank when he first got to Denver, but of course, by the time he finished up, for that Super Bowl, I mean, he was a shell of himself. But you look at it, I mean, John Elway has just consistently missed at the quarterback position. Although, I still do believe that Drew Lock can get some production. Like I see something in him more than I've seen in like Paxton Lynch and the other guys that they've had. So we just got to see what happens.
I'm telling you, William, he's not it, man. I would be. They might draft the quarterback again.
Hmm.
I mean, you had to see it. I was a little shocked at how bad he played, and you have to remember, as good as Justin Herbert played this year, the test for these young quarterbacks is these next couple of years. Once the book is out there on you,
Right.
and the rest of the league understands what you do well, what you don't do well, they will make you do what you don't do well. And if you
Right.
don't get good at it fast, you're going to look very bad. We've seen these quarterbacks come out early and have success in the first couple of years, and then all of a sudden, straight up a cliff. Look, Carson Wentz. Look what happened to Jared Goff. It continues as a trend.
Right.
So the kid that threw 7 touchdowns and 3 interceptions is that year he played that half a year. Everybody said he was the second coming, and then look, the book is out on you, Drew Lock, and here you go. You played you played terrible, played horrible. He was bad. I'm interested to see what happens after the book is out on Herbert. I mean, his talent is there. I mean, I couldn't believe how well he played. He was another quarterback that wasn't very accurate in college and got to the NFL. And I don't know what they did over there in San Diego, what they did in LA for him, but he was a handful. He was a handful. He's athletic. He's big. He's accurate. I mean, geez, he's the goods if you've seen it in ever. But you got to give these young quarterbacks time to prove that they can last the time of the league catching up to them.
So as a final thought, who do you feel won free agency? Which team so far?
I really don't have the answer to that, Will. I mean, who do I think helped themselves? What team got the best player to help their team win now? I think the jury's still out on that. There's so many good players that still aren't signed. It's not even funny. Think about it. Offhand, right? If I felt like a team got better right away, I'm gonna shoot a little bit of an obscure shot out in the air and say I like what Arizona's done. Like I said, these guys are older, but if they can get that one more good year out of those two guys, it can go a long way because they already have that right there on the verge of talent right there. They got Hudson. He's 32. They got A.J. Green. He's 31. How old's J.J. Watt? He's 30-something too. So if they get good years out of these 3 guys, the offensive line just got better, right? The defensive line just got better, and they have another good wide receiver. Now what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to run the ball better. I mean, the Kingsbury's going to have to commit to running the football a little bit more, and that'll keep Kyler Murray from just running around like a crazy person all the time. Just calm him down some. They got to run the football a little bit more in Arizona. But, I mean, offhand, I got to say, I like what they done. I mean, I'm not really crazy about what the Raiders done so far, but like I said, it's still early. It's still early. It's a lot of time. I'm sure you're not crazy about what the Giants did. Y'all signed Kyle Rudolph. Did you hear about that?
I'm not. Listen, as long as Daniel Jones is the quarterback of the Giants, they could have signed Jerry Rice in his prime for all I care. It wouldn't make a difference. So, I mean, I'm not moved by it. I mean, X-Lax would move me more than, Daniel Jones quarterback, for the Giants right now. That's how I feel. But I mean, for my money, the team who I really felt won free agency so far, I got to go with Tampa, and it's for the simple fact that I'm like, if you're the Bucs, you're bringing back proven commodities, guys that helped you, win. Obviously, Tom Brady restructuring his deal helped that. But you look at it, you bring back Shaq Barrett, you bring back Levante David, you bring back Chris Godwin. And I mean, you look at it, even without Chris Godwin, the Bucs are talented at wide receiver, but now you bring him back. You got Godwin, you still got Mike Evans, you got, Scotty Miller. Rob Gronkowski, Cameron Brate. I think again, when it's all said and done, they're going to get AB at quarterback. I think they're going to get AB.
Don't they get OJ Howard back too?
Right. So I mean, listen, it's an embarrassment of riches right there. And then, they bring back Shaq Barrett and Levante David, and they still have an opportunity to draft. And I know that the Bucks are going to be picking last in each round, but especially in rounds 1 and 2, how many times have we seen it where teams reach 4 guys early on, and those teams who are picking later in round 1 get a guy who really should have gone mid-first round. And now you're going to have an opportunity, if you're Tampa, more than likely to take one of these guys in round 1, to take one of these guys in round 2. So, they're going to be right back in the mix, man.
Well, I'm sure we're going to do a draft show.
Definitely.
Probably in the next month. And I tell you, offensive line is absolutely loaded. I mean, you as a big guy, you love the guys up front. This offensive line draft is loaded, and maybe that's why the Raiders are just like, we're gonna
load up.
We're gonna go. Yeah, we're gonna go draft this one. Yeah, because I'm telling you, from rounds 1 to 3, there's starters all up and down the offensive line. There's a good maybe you might see 7 tackles in round 1, or 6 to 7 tackles in round 1, and 5 quarterbacks too. Let's not forget about that. But this draft is loaded up front. It's so many good offensive linemen. It's really kind of sort of ridiculous, and you're gonna see these guys. Tampa's interesting. They hit on their first 2 picks. These guys were basically stars, and
Right.
They went to a team full of stars. Tristan Wirfs was lights out, man.
Yeah.
Lights out. He was lights out. And you guys drafted that kid 4, and he was struggling. But the kid from Georgia.
And look at the guy that the Titans drafted. He's already been traded.
Oh,
yeah.
Wilson.
Yeah, he got traded to Miami.
Interesting nugget. That kid's from Brooklyn.
For a 7th round pick. So
yeah, that kid's from
you go from taking a guy so early, okay, to now trading him the very next year for a 7th round pick.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the nugget behind that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I know now. That kid's from Brooklyn. He went to Poly Prep. Guess where the Dolphins head coach went?
Poly Prep. There you go.
So that's home cooking there. And they basically dumped him because they said he was immature and he had bad character. I don't know that kid at all. I've been coaching football in Brooklyn since 2003. I know a lot of these kids. I don't know him at all, but that's some home cooking there.
Yeah.
All right. So he's looking out for his own, which I'll never, ever, ever look down upon that. Shout out to Brian Flores, man. First head coach from Brooklyn, according to what I can tell. And, as a minority, we're minorities, you got to root for him, man. I root for him every time, except for when they play the Raiders. But, that guy, man, he's amazing. He went out there, won a bunch of games this year, and I want to see him do good. So I think he's just looking out for his own, because if there was a kid from Nazareth and I was an NFL coach and he was in trouble, guess who I'm doing? Guess what I'm doing? I'm going to look out for him. So, by the way, Nash football is back. Well, I bumped into them in the park. They were practicing.
Good, man. Good, man. But listen, we were able to touch on a lot of good tidbits from the show. Free agency is still going on. A lot of interesting signings, a lot of good signings, a lot of questionable signings that have happened so far. But like you said, that's going to be the perfect segue for us, coming into next month with the NFL draft, because we want to see like how much are these teams who are going to have needs go out there and get it done. And I know you're going to join me again. Saying like,
of course.
Listen, that's a given. I know you're on it like wet paint, so I ain't even worried about that. But once again, thanks as always, my brother. I appreciate your time so much, man. The love's right here, man. And
always, man. Always.
And we definitely going to chop this up soon. And folks, as always, check me out on Twitter at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'd be my pleasure to follow you right back. If you like what you saw and heard tonight, please feel free to subscribe to this channel here on YouTube. And as well, if you're on Facebook, check me out on the Sports Depot 365. We're constantly talking sports on there, just like this. So you know what? Come in and get your fill. Dennis, as always, it was a pleasure. Definitely can't wait to do something with the NFL draft. We're going to be talking about the NBA postseason situation real soon, and we're going to chop it up, brother.
All right. Just send me the invite, and we're going to be back at it.
All right, man. Take care and have a good one, man.
All right, man. You too. Later.
Alrighty.